I moved into this house about 3 weeks ago. I got a very good deal on the place. I pay $850 a month for a 3 bedroom bungalow styled house with one full bathroom, a living room, a dining room, a laundry room, and a kitchen. Also, a good sized front porch that stretches the entire width of the house, and a small deck like patio off the back door, as well as a 10 by 18-foot shed in the backyard. Great deal, right? Anyway, I came up on the house by accident. I was driving home from work. I'm a teller at the bank in town. Wait a minute, let me rephrase that. I am the head teller at the bank in town. I had just got promoted at that time. Now, like I said, I was driving home from work. There was an accident or something at the intersection right before my old apartment building. The cops had the road blocked off, so I had to make a right and follow the detour signs. I knew where I was, so I paid no mind to the signs. I get to the first stoplight, make a left, get to the next stoplight, make another left, follow the road down, and the apartment building will be on the right. You see, I've lived in this town for many years, so I know various ways to get almost anywhere. Anyway, I made the right, went about half a mile, and saw the house on my left. It was white with blue shutters on the windows. There was a for rent sign in the middle of the yard and a white pickup truck in the driveway. I passed the house and got to the first stoplight. As I sat there with 3 cars ahead of me, I got to thinking, I'm making pretty good money now. I can afford a little more than $700 a month that I'm paying for a ratty 1 bedroom apartment with paper-thin walls and noisy neighbors. What the hell? I'm going to check it out. When the light turned green, I followed the cars into the intersection. I made a highly illegal U-turn in the middle of it and headed back towards the house. I got to the house and pulled in the driveway right beside the white truck. An older African-American man stepped out of the driver's side of the truck and walked over to my car. I drive a blue 2001 Saturn. Not that that's important or anything. Anyway, he walked over and politely asked, "Can I help you, son?" Yes, sir. I was wondering who to call about the house," I replied. "My name's Julius. I'm the owner," he said. "And you are?" "My name's Daniel, sir. It's nice to meet you," I answered, extending my hand out to him. We then shook hands. "Come on, Daniel. Have a look around, and if you like it, then we'll talk about it," he said. "Cool," I stated and got out of the car. I followed him up the steps that led to the porch. There was a white wicker couch with light blue cushions on the right, and a white wicker chair, again with light blue cushions on the left. They're still there, by the way. Julius opened the screen door, then the front door, and said, "I still got a little bit of work to do in here. The last tenants trashed the place." "That's okay," I replied. We then walked into the house and was immediately in the living room with the window on the front wall to your left looking out onto the porch and 2 windows on the left side wall looking out into the neighbor's yard. Beyond that is the dining room with 2 windows on the left side wall as well, again looking out to the neighbor's yard. Then it's the kitchen with 2 small windows above the sink on your left looking out to, yeah, get the idea? Right. Anyway, then finally the laundry room with 2 small windows on the left side wall and 2 small windows on the wall in front of you looking out to the backyard with a back door to the right of the windows leading outside. There's a doorway on the right side of the dining room which leads to a small hallway. A bathroom sits straight ahead with no windows, a master bedroom to the right, my bedroom, with a window on the left wall looking out to the other neighbor's yard, and a window on the wall in front of you, again looking out to the porch, and 2 back-to-back bedrooms to the left, each with 1 window on the right wall, again looking out to the neighbor's yard. Did you follow all that? Good. Anyway, the first bedroom I use is my writing room, with a small desk against the far back wall, and my computer against the wall directly in front of you as you walk in. The back bedroom I use as my recording studio with my drum kit in the back right corner, my 3 guitars as well as my bass guitar, my amp huddled together in the far left corner, a keyboard just under the window, a stand-up microphone in the direct center of the room, and my 4-track recorder on a small table in the corner on your right as you walk in. I love music, any kind of music. If I like it, I listen to it. I taught myself how to play all those instruments, using how-to books, and write little songs every now and then. Now, back to the layout of the house. There's a door leading from the front laundry room to my studio, and a door between the studio and my writing room. Anyway, I quickly looked around. I love it, I told Julius. How much do you want for it? I asked. When he told me $850, I was completely shocked. I can do that, I said, then asked the normal questions. Has there been any satanic rituals performed in the house? Any dealings with the paranormal? Has anyone died in the house? That's a joke, by the way, except the last question. I actually asked that one. He told me that the house was built in 1936 and that multiple people and families have lived here, including him and his family, and that there's a good chance that someone did actually die in the house. Anyway, he also told me that it wouldn't be available for another 2 weeks because of having to finish the repairs, but I still wanted it. I could move in, no first month's rent, no credit check, no security deposit, nothing. He said I had an honest face, and then gave me his phone number, then removed the for rent sign from the front yard. I thanked him, got back in my car, and went home. I called him 2 weeks later, and he said that the house was ready. I met him at the house. He handed me the keys and told me to drop off a check at his house by the 5th of every month. He only lived 3 houses down. He didn't even make me sign a lease. He just handed me a piece of paper stating that he owned the house, I was renting it from him, and that I would be responsible for any utility bills from that day forward until further notice. I thanked him again, and he left. I then went to the electric company, showed them the paper, and had them switch the electric over into my name, and did the same with the cable company and the gas company. After that, I went back to my apartment, grabbed my clothes and such, and put what I could in the car. I asked my sister Candy, she's in charge of all the cashiers at Barnaby's, if she would save me some big boxes, and she did. I picked up all my kitchenware, my knickknacks, and all the little stuff in the boxes. My boss at work agreed to help me move the furniture and boxes the next day. He's got an old Ford F-350. Anyway, the next day I told the building manager that I was moving out after loading up the truck. All he said was, okay, and shut the door in my face. I then got in the truck and we drove to the house. Frank, my boss, and I then moved all the furniture in boxes from the first trip into the house. We had to make several trips back and forth to get it all. He also helped me arrange the furniture, put the food in the pantry and the fridge, put the boxes in their respective rooms, set up the drum kit, and plug in all the electronics. The first thing I did was make a pot of coffee. After we were done, I thanked him, gave him a to-go cup of coffee, and he left. It was about 3:30 in the afternoon at that point. So there I was in my new house, happy and smiling from ear to ear. I decided to go out and celebrate. Nothing big and fancy or anything like that. I went to the kitchen, turned off the coffee pot, grabbed my keys and my wallet, turned on the porch light, as I didn't know what time I would be getting home, then stood there in the middle of the living room contemplating what to do. I decided to treat myself to part 2 of the remake of the Stephen King movie It. Cartwright Cinema in the next town over was showing an afternoon matinee of the movie, which totally sucked, by the way, and I'm a huge Stephen King fan. The original miniseries was so much better. Anyway, I then went to Chelsea's and treated myself to dinner. They served my favorite kind of food all day long. That's right, breakfast. Pancakes, eggs with cheese, of course, bacon, sausage, shredded hash browns, biscuits, and free refills of coffee. I love breakfast foods. Wow, none of this is important. I gotta stop doing that and just tell the story. Anyway, I left Chelsea's and drove home. I pulled in the driveway just as the sun was beginning to set, and that's when I saw it. A big black pit bull lying down on the front porch right in front of the steps. What the fuck? I said to myself, sitting in the car and staring at the dog. I must have sat there for about a good 10 minutes, scared to get out of the car. Now, I am a huge animal lover, but pit bulls have a really bad reputation, and I really didn't want to take that chance. So I just sat there, hoping the dog would go away. It did not. It just laid there. After another 5 minutes or so, all that coffee caught up to me, and I had to piss like a racehorse. I thought about just pissing myself, but quickly dismissed that idea. I didn't have a choice. I gotta go, I told myself, and I opened the car door, stepped out, turning off the car, keeping the keys in my hand, and not taking my eyes off the dog. I then slowly closed the door. The door then squeaked as it closed. The sound seemed to alert the dog of my presence, as it rose to its feet, turned, and stared at me. The dog was massive, with a bright red collar around its neck, and would appear to be several links of chain hanging from the collar. It had to be at least 100 pounds. It just stared at me. Its dark black eyes felt like they were penetrating the deepest caverns of my soul. I put my hands up in front of me. "Good puppy. Stay, puppy. Please don't eat me, puppy," I said nervously, inching my way towards the back door, as the front door was not an option. I call all dogs puppies, by the way, in case you're wondering why I said that. Anyway, the dog just stood there. It didn't move, it didn't growl, it didn't bark. Nothing. Once I was around the corner of the house with the dog out of sight, I quickly ran to the back door, fumbled with the keys, praying to God that I didn't piss myself, found the key, put it in the lock, turned it, opened the door, stepped inside, shut the door, locked it, and ran like a wild man to the bathroom and handled my business. A huge sigh of relief. Not only because I made it to the bathroom, but also because I made it past the dog. When I was done, I walked to the living room and looked out of the front window. Through the glow of the porch light, I could see that the dog was lying back down again, right in front of the steps. I decided to leave him be, and if he was still there in the morning, I would try and make friends with him. Now, it was still early, so I decided to start clearing out some of the boxes. I put on another pot of coffee and started in the dining room. I hung all the pictures where I wanted them, put the tablecloth on the table, and put my father's cast iron toy collection that he left me when he passed on the shelf by the window. I then started working on the kitchen. It was about 8:30 at that point. I had just opened the first box when I heard the dog begin to bark, loud. It wasn't a "there's a cat, I'm gonna chase it" bark. No, it was a "I'm gonna rip your freaking face off" bark, followed by the sound of something heavy hitting the front door repeatedly, like the dog was jumping on it, trying to get in. The barking grew louder and more intense. I was starting to get concerned. I took 2 steps toward the living room in an attempt to see what was making the dog freak out. That's when I heard a loud pounding on the back door. I turned to see the door come flying open, slamming hard against the wall, and a large man, about 250 pounds, wearing a black ski mask, holding a long-bladed knife in his right hand, standing in the doorway. I screamed and ran for the front door, fearing for my life. Now, I know what you're thinking. I would have fought the guy, and I would have if he didn't have a knife. All my stuff is replaceable. My life is not. With that being said, let me continue. I ran out of the kitchen and attempted to go around the dining room table. I lost my footing and slammed hard into the wall, my head hitting so hard that it smashed a hole in the drywall, making me dizzy and my vision blurry. I watched with blurred vision as the guy grabbed me by the collar of my shirt, the blade of the knife mere inches from my face, and threw me across the room, landing hard on the floor, on my stomach, and sliding head first into the shelf, where I put my father's cast iron toys, several of them falling to the ground. I looked into the living room for a split second and saw the dog slamming its head against the window and barking viciously. I reached out toward the window. "Help," I murmured, close to the point of losing consciousness. The guy then grabbed me, turned me over, put the knife to my throat, and screamed, "Where's the money?" "I don't have any money," I said, but I'm sure it just came out as gibberish. I then felt an extremely hard punch to the right side of my head. I closed my eyes. I then heard glass breaking. I opened my eyes, my vision really blurry, but I could still make out shadows. I watched as the guy leaned back off of me, tossed the knife through the air into his right hand, and drew back, just as this huge black shadow flew over the top of me, slamming hard into the guy, causing him to slam into the table, then down to the floor. The sound of the knife, I assumed at the time, was heard hitting the floor soon after. With the weight of the man now off of me, I raised both of my hands and rubbed my eyes. My head was pounding, but my vision became a little better. I turned my head to the left and saw and heard the guy screaming as the pit bull snarled, growled, and barked in his face, but not biting him. I slowly began to sit up, using the shelf as leverage. Another one of the toys fell off, hitting the ground. The dog then turned his attention off of the guy and to the sound behind him. In that one split second, the guy reached up and pushed the dog off of him, causing it to hit the floor. As it tried to regain its footing, as the guy began to stand up, so did I, grabbing a cast iron horse from the floor as I did so. Through my still blurred vision, I saw the guy stand and take a step toward the dog, swinging his leg back like he was going to kick him. "No!" I screamed and threw the horse, Hail Mary style, in the direction of the guy's head, falling back down to the floor. A loud thud could be heard soon after, followed by the guy falling hard to the floor, the cast iron horse as well. The guy stopped moving at that point. I thought he was dead. I then watched as the dog stood up, looked at the guy, and slowly walked over to me. I was still a little groggy. The dog then put his face mere inches away from mine. As our eyes met, I did not see any anger in its eyes. I saw tears. It then licked my face just once, then turned, ran, and jumped back out of the window. I heard it whine as it did. "Come back, puppy! Come back!" I said, slightly slurring my words. I quickly reached in my pocket and pulled out my cell phone. I held the home button until Siri answered. I told Siri to call 911 and held the phone to my ear. I told the 911 dispatcher that I needed cops and an ambulance at my residence, answered a few questions, then hung up the phone. The guy still was not moving. Shortly after, I heard sirens in the distance, got to my feet, and stumbled to the door, opening it up. The cops were first to arrive, and I told them what happened and gave them my contact information. The ambulance arrived soon after and tended to the guy, who was unconscious but still alive. They used smelling salts to wake him up as they handcuffed him and put him in the back of the ambulance. They then tended to me. The paramedic said I was showing signs of a severe concussion and suggested I go with them to the hospital. Now, I know there isn't any actual treatment for a concussion, just rest and relaxation, so I declined. Besides, I had a dog to find. My vision was starting to come back to normal. I just had a real bad headache. The cops took the knife as evidence, took pictures of what was left on my back door, as well as the hole in the wall, and left. So did the EMTs. I took a few Tylenol, then began searching for the dog. I opened the front door, hoping to find the dog on the porch. It was not. I walked out onto the porch and saw what appeared to be a small pool of blood just underneath the window, blood on the broken glass in the window, and droplets of it leading to the steps. "Oh my God, he's hurt," I said frantically to myself. "I gotta find him." In retrospect, why the cops didn't see the blood, I'll never know, but they didn't. Anyway, I quickly turned on the flashlight on my phone and frantically began searching the front yard, then the side yard, yelling into the darkness, "Puppy, where are you? Puppy, where are you?" It wasn't until I reached the backyard and shined my light over towards the shed, that's when I saw him laying on his side. I ran over to him. He had a huge gash on the lower part of his front leg. He was whining in pain. "It's going to be okay, boy," I said, petting his head. He just looked at me, tears in his eyes. What I did next, I still can't believe I did. I guess I was running on adrenaline at that point. I reached down and scooped the dog, all 100 plus pounds of him, like he was a feather, and carried him through the broken back door, through the laundry room, through the kitchen, through the dining room, and into the living room, laying him down on the couch. I was covered in blood, and so was the couch, but I didn't care about that. I quickly called my friend Jimmy, who works at the local ASPCA, told him what had happened and that the dog needed help. I knew Jimmy would know what to do, as he's told me stories about helping other injured animals at work. He quickly came over, carrying a black medical bag like a doctor making a house call. He kind of was, if you think about it. Anyway, he tended to the wound, wrapped it, and gave me several little white pills, some ointment, a bunch of gauze pads, and 2 rolls of tape. He said to put the ointment on the wound and change the bandage every 12 hours, and to give the dog 1 pill a day until they were gone. He also told me to forget where I got the pills from, as he wasn't allowed to give out medication since he wasn't actually a vet and could go to jail if anyone find out. "I don't know shit, man," I said. We sat at the dining room table, drinking coffee and talking after that, the dog finally falling asleep on the couch. There's no way in hell that dog is sleeping outside anymore. He saved my life. If it wasn't for him, I'd probably be dead. He's mine now, I told myself. Jimmy helped me fix the back door as best we could. I unplugged the dryer and pushed it in front of the door to try and hold it up. We said our goodbyes and he left. It was getting late, so I turned the coffee pot off in the kitchen, went to my bedroom, grabbed the comforter off the bed as well as my pillow, then walked back out to the living room. I pushed the coffee table out of the way, laid the comforter on the floor, the pillow too, turned off all the lights and laid down. After what that dog just did for me, I was not going to leave him alone. I soon fell asleep. Anyway, I was awoken the next morning by a huge wet puppy tongue licking my face. I opened my eyes to see him staring at me, wagging his tail with his tongue sticking out. My headache was gone and my vision was back to normal. "Good morning, boy," I said, petting his head and rubbing his ears. He again licked my face repeatedly. I got up, then stumbled into the kitchen and put on a pot of coffee. The dog followed close behind. I gave him a bowl of water. I didn't have any dog food, so I gave him some leftover spaghetti from the fridge. He finished eating, looked at me, and barked as I drank my coffee at the table. "You gotta go outside, boy?" I asked him. He barked again. "Okay, let's go," I said, grabbing the coffee cup and heading for the door. I got to the door and thought, what if he runs away? I then looked down at the dog, who in turn looked up at me. I opened the front door and the screen door as the dog slowly jogged outside down the porch steps and made a left toward the side yard out of my line of sight. Fearing that he ran away, I quickly ran down the steps and turned towards the side yard, and there he was, wiggling his tail back in the grass. I stood there and smiled. Suddenly, I heard a voice to my right. "Midnight, is that you? Come here, boy," I heard a soft female voice say. I turned my head to see a woman about my age, slightly chubby, with curly brown hair. The dog quickly stood up and ran over to her excitedly as she knelt down and began petting him all over. "What happened to your paw?" she said, holding his wounded paw in her hand. I then walked over to them. "Hi, I'm Daniel. I just moved in next door," I said. She stood up and said, "Hi, Daniel, I'm Donna. I guess we're neighbors," as the dog ran back to the yard and began rolling in the grass. "What happened to his paw?" she asked. I told her everything that happened. "Oh my God, are you all right?" she asked. "Yeah, I'll be fine," I answered. "Do you know this dog?" I asked. "Yeah, that's Midnight. Well, that's what I call him. I'm not sure he even has a name. He belonged to the people that lived here before. They weren't very nice people. They kept him chained up in the backyard. I can see the pile of cinder blocks where he was chained to, and the chain lying on the ground right over there," she said and pointed toward my backyard. I turned and saw what she was talking about. "They hardly ever fed him," she continued. "I used to bring him food and water when I could. The people left the house one day and never came back. That was 2 months ago. And shortly after they left, I guess Midnight broke the chain and took off, and I hadn't seen him until today." "I wonder why he came back?" I asked. "Well, this was his home, good or bad, so he came home," she answered. "Well, he's got a good home now," I said. Donna just smiled. "Bye, Donna," I said, waving. "Come on, Midnight, let's get inside," and began to walk to the porch. Midnight followed close behind. We then went inside. I changed his bandage soon after. I then called Julius and told him about the back door, the window, and the dog. He said he'd have someone stop by and fix them, and he did. I got a brand new back door and a new window. He also said I could keep the dog at no extra charge. I then called Frank and told him what happened and that I needed a few days off to recuperate. He agreed and gave me the rest of the week off. Anyway, I smashed all the cinder blocks into nothing but dust using an old sledgehammer that I found in the shed, screaming "never again" as I did, and threw the chain away. I then went to the local pet store, got a huge bag of dog food, kibbles and bits to be exact, some dog toys, a new collar, a leash, and a dog tag that reads "Midnight. If found, please call this number," with my cell phone number on it. Yeah, he does eat dog food on occasion. He likes people food better, though. I mean, what dog doesn't, right? He really likes breakfast foods. Anyway, I took Midnight with me. He did really good in the car. He just sat in the passenger seat looking around. He didn't bark once, even when there were people around. I took the old collar off of him when I got back to the car and threw it in the trash can just outside the front door of the store. I made a stop at Bob's hardware store, got a sheetrock patch and some drywall compound to fix the hole in the wall. When we got home, I fixed the hole, finished unpacking all the boxes, and put it all away, which took about 3 hours, with Midnight's help, of course. Well, not really. He just sat there chewing on his toys, but he kept me company. Anyway, the cops called me a few days later and said that the guy pled guilty to breaking and entering, assault with a deadly weapon, and multiple other charges. I wouldn't have to testify, and that he was in jail awaiting sentence. Midnight no longer sleeps outside. No, he sleeps in bed with me. He has his own pillow and his own side of the bed. I've been trying to teach him how to make the bed, but since he doesn't have thumbs, it's kind of hard for him to do. But he's trying. He's a sweet, lovable dog, the total opposite of the reputation that pit bulls have. I guess it's all in how you raise them. Donnie and I have become really good friends over the past few weeks. We hang out, play with Midnight in the yard, watch movies, drink coffee, and talk. Midnight really likes her, and so do I. I even wrote a little song for her. Want to hear it? No? Okay, maybe later. Anyway, I'm teaching her how to play keyboard. She's a fast learner. I'm thinking of asking her out on a real date. What do you think?